I instantly thought, I have to be part of this. I have to be part of this project because it's the first one that I had ever heard of. We have so many stories that we've grown up with as Indos, everything that our grandparents have gone through in the war, and the trials and tribulations to make it through the war, come over to a different country, a freezing cold country, mind you, and have to start new. You hear these stories, and I thought someone could write a book about this. Someone could make a movie about this. Someone should do a documentary on this. I haven't seen documentaries on this. There's only really one movie that comes to mind, and that is the Dutch movie My Blue Heaven, Mijn Blauwe Hemel, which was made in 1990, I think. And that is the only movie I can think of that can tell the story of what it was like to be an Indo growing up in Holland. I had to be part of this because, yeah, I wouldn't want it to die out, because me being a third generation Indo, I don't have these stories to pass on to any children or grandchildren, and yeah, I just think it's very important that the story has to be told. Yeah. Yeah. So Indische mensen, they were being beheaded in the street, assassinated. Dutch soldiers, anyone that resembled, you couldn't even apparently speak Dutch in Indonesia. So that's why my mother and her family, they had to all flee. They had to stay in a Dutch camp and then be brought over to Holland for safety, basically. I'm an Indo, is that my mum fell in love with a Dutchman. And yeah, that's how it came to be. That's how I came along. So, and then we immigrated here to Australia in 1987. And I think the reason that we immigrated here was they wanted to give me a chance to I think the chances are different here in Australia than Holland. And back then they had, they were advertising on the television in Holland. Is it Paul Hogan? Paul Hogan, where he advertises, throw another shrimp on the barbie.
I'll slip an extra shrimp on the barbie for you.
And back then, I think the Flying Doctors. And Skippy. So just to see those television shows, we're like, oh, that's a beautiful country.
Even I remember that.
Yeah, Skippy and...
Yeah, it was in the 80s.
That was in the 80s, yeah. And that looks just like, well, Mama said, oh, just like in Indonesia. It looks so tropical, it's beautiful. Everyone is so laid back and wearing t-shirts and shorts. It's warm weather. So that's why we immigrated here. Also mainly for the weather, because if you know the Dutch weather, you know what it's like. I have to say I felt very lost, because you grow up in an Indo lifestyle, and you come to a country that I guess didn't quite understand the history to it. So I, as an Indo and going to school, being the only Dewi that anyone had ever heard of, even though it was very unique, I got teased a lot of the way I looked, of my name, things like that. So it was very lonely. It was very sad. I really missed my cousins in Holland, because you couldn't. It almost as though you couldn't be yourself. You had to be someone else. Your mannerisms, where the Indo mannerisms, you're very polite and you're very, not blowing my own horn, but you're humble and you're polite and all of those things. And I think people look at you and think that it's a bit strange that you're maybe overly polite, or the way that you talk, or so I felt really, really like a fish out of water and very lonely. So I missed that. So the only sort of place I felt at home was with Mama and Papa, because we spoke Dutch. That they have spoken Dutch to me since we came to Australia, so I have never forgotten it, which is good, definitely, to know a second language, but the language you grew up with. So I'm just so proud to be in Indo and to be with Mama and Papa, where you can be yourself. It is just the best feeling in the world. And trying to teach my husband little things, little Indo eccentricities, for him was a bit strange at first. Like, he was like, "Why is there bottles of water in the toilet?" And I said, "Oh, okay. Well," and then trying to explain to him how to actually do a bottle chebok. And because he is left-handed, so he would obviously, most people are right-handed. I said, if you're right-handed, don't wash your bits with your hand you eat with, okay? Because that's considered dirty. Also, make sure, you exchange money with your right hand, shake with your right hand. But for him, it's difficult because he's left-handed. So, just little Indo eccentricities, like don't exchange money at night time, or what else is there? Don't cut your nails at night time. All those sorts of superstitions. Indo superstitions. Like, if you give someone a knife or something sharp as a present, you always have to give them, like, if I give you a knife, you have to give me like a dollar coin or something as an exchange, so it doesn't sever our friendship. Just things like that. And it made me think the other day of that movie Gremlins. Do you know that movie Gremlins? Yeah? Where there are 3 rules. Don't expose them to sunlight, don't get them wet, and don't feed them after midnight, because that's sometimes how these superstitions are, because they sound so silly to other people, but for us it's like it's the norm, it's the normal. It's almost like a movie. Like, you wouldn't believe that these things had taken place. And that's why it's like, oh, these stories have to be told, because it's so important that people know what our culture had gone through. Like, it's so important. And so she remembers a lot of what happened. And so yes, she was born in 1942, and right when the war started. So it was trying times. My grandfather was taken away by the Japanese and put in a POW camp and interrogated. So the stories there were terrible. My grandmother being at home with Mama at the time, and Mama being so weak and sickly because I was saying that there wasn't enough food to go around, so she was very malnutritioned because my grandmother couldn't produce enough breast milk, so she had to grow up on rice milk, which in turn made her teeth fall out earlier and very brittle little bones. So a lot of that, so it never goes away because she's suffering from it now at the age of 78. She's 78 now, so she's suffering from osteoporosis, which is the brittle bones because of not enough calcium when she was in the developing stage of when she was a child. Also knowing that that her father, when her father was returned back to the family, she didn't even recognize him and was frightened by him, and she said that she was hiding behind my grandmother. She was hiding behind her mum because she didn't know who this stranger was. So it took time to reconnect again with her father. And then obviously the period of growing up until so after the war, when the war was finished, and growing up in Chimahi and in Sukamandi, and how innocent everything was back then. So different to what we have now with technology. They had nothing of that. It was just such more simpler, gentler times. And obviously leading up to the point in the 70s when it started to get dangerous to live in Indonesia, and having to flee a country that you were born in through no fault of your own, be extradited out of your very own country that you were born in. Even so, it just so sad. And then obviously coming to Holland, where even there you didn't feel welcome because it was also a trying time with all these so-called immigrants moving into the country. So yeah, it's what our family, your family, what all Indos have endured to get to where they are today is just what they've had to go through just to be equals as everybody else. Because it was a very sad time too, being in Holland back in the 60s and 70s. Like, you were homesick for your country who didn't want you, for your very own people who didn't want you, and then coming to Holland there was lots of people, of course, that made it known that they didn't want you there either. So it was like having to climb your way up to the top. So I'm just so proud of my mum. I'm so proud of her, of what she has endured through all those years. And now finally finding peace here in Australia. I think, well, definitely family more than anything. Family makes you feel at home, because it's what you've grown up with. it's your elders, it's everything. The person that you are is because of the way you've been brought up with the influences of your family. And there's nothing, I feel nothing better than being with my parents. Like I said, they're just, and that makes me feel more at home than anything in the world. And what's even better is when we go back to Holland and we see the family and we're all together again. And that is one big Indo party, let me tell you that. That is one big Indo party, but that is, I can't even really describe, that love. It feels like love. When you fall in love, that wonderful feeling, that's what it feels like when I'm with my family and with my parents. That's home. And the thing is, you don't have to be at your house to feel at home. No matter where we have been, we have moved so much. We've made something a home, but even when we were in the middle of moving and we had bought a camper van and we had driven from Melbourne all the way up to Cairns, and even when we were living in a camper van, we were together, and that was home. Doesn't matter where you are, as long as you're together, that's home. That feeling right there is home. They tell me everything. I don't even have to ask. I think they already know, because, you want to listen to these stories. And so I think the only questions that I do ask, definitely, are recipes. Because once those recipes of our aunties and our grandparents, once they're gone, those recipes are gone. So you want to write down the recipes of all your aunties and uncles, because that'll get passed down, and that's how the memories and their stories live on, is definitely because Indos are all about food. We're all about food, and to have those recipes and pass it on and share it with friends, that's a way of telling a story, because there's no other food like Indo food. I think we all, as human beings, we all have a sense of belonging, and I'm content. I know where I'm from. I'm proud to be Indo. I'm so lucky to be here and share this story for other Indos. Like every Indo story is different, but same but different in every way. And I just think it's fantastic also, because we've been talking about Jago Wolf, that his identity as Ricky Risoles is just amazing. He has got us as an Indo community. He's got it down pat. He's every song, all his words. The Indo eccentricities, he's got it down pat, and he should just continue doing what he's doing, because he is carrying on. He's carrying on our Indo culture. He's carrying it on for future generations. And soon, when my Oma has already passed away, but once those first and second generations start to pass away, soon it'll only be stories. Oh, my Oma, I heard from my mum that my grandma would do this or say that, and then so forth and so forth. Then there'll be like fourth and fifth and sixth and seventh generations, and that'll be just a past. Like, we're still able to tell it as it is, of the past, of how Dutch Indo came to be, coming from Indonesia to Holland, and like we were saying before, getting homesick, but not having the foods that what they grew up with, simple Indonesian ingredients, coming to a country that didn't have any Asian supermarkets. They had to improvise, and I can't even imagine that, especially with food is life, and then not having those ingredients that you were able to get every day. And yeah, it's sort of just unbelievable to think that they weren't able to just go down to the toko and just get bumbu for this or that. It just mind boggles me. And yeah, we have that luxury now to go and just order online and buy whatever ingredients we need at the supermarket, and they never had that. And yeah, just unbelievable, those stories. So yeah, we want to carry on. All us Indos want to carry on the traditions, keep the traditions alive, because once they die out, it'll just be history. It'll just be stories of stories. So I think it's just so valuable. We're at that age now where you can do something like this and spread the word and unite everyone together.